Now I'm going to show you another interesting idea. So if you play bishop b7, sometimes it is wise to develop the knight on a6. As you know, I'm very fond of developing my knight to a6. It is used by me also in the Queen's Indian defense, in the Scandinavian defense. And here I will show you several interesting examples. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, g3, d5, bishop b4 check, then the bishop is going back, now queen c2, castle, castle, b6, bishop b4, bishop b7, and now the move rook d1. In the previous video clip I've shown you some things which you should be afraid when you develop the knight to d7. Here in this position it is very interesting to develop the knight on a6. So the idea is that knight on a6 supporting the advance of the pawn c5. Also we can win the tempo playing knight b4 at some point, then we take on c4 and the knight from b4 can go to d5. And also when our knight is on b4 we can also play bishop a6 and win the pawn on e2. So these are several possible examples. I've played several games with it exactly in this position. One of the game continued with the move knight e5. After knight e5 I play rook c8 in order to protect the square c6. Now knight c3, and I'm going to exchange that knight. The similar reaction was seen by us previously. Queen b3, exchange on e5, and now I'm going to exchange other pieces. Exchange on d6, rook ac1, and now queen b4. All the pieces are eliminated, and the draw was agreed here in the game Tiviakov. If after knight a6 white plays knight c3, this is a standard reaction, then it is easy for black to equalize playing the move dc4. White must play knight e5 or knight d2, but here knight d2 is not possible because the pawn on d4 is hanging, so knight e5 is almost forced. Then we play knight d5. Now the idea is to play b5 to protect this pawn, so knight c4 is necessary, knight f4, exchange on f4, and then we play knight b4. So you see we won the tempo attacking the queen on c2, and when the queen goes to b3 we play knight d5, and after e3 we play rook c8, rook c1, rook c7, knight e5, f6, knight d3, and we play f5. Our knight on d5 is extremely strong, very well protected, and it can never be pushed by the advance e4. And if white knight goes to e5, then we can always exchange it playing bishop d6, and then we take on e5. Also we have the additional possibility to create counter play, playing g7, g5 at some point. Here I just want to show you the following moves, which are important. Knight e5, bishop d6, rook d2. Now I take on e5, as I told you before, d5, now rook d7, rook cd1, and black is opening the position and creating counterplay. After fg5, queen g5, f4, the draw was agreed in my game against Rustemov. If white plays queen d2, then we play in a similar way. Knight d5, rook ac1, and we play f5. This position is equal, and probably the wise option for white is to force the repetition of moves by playing knight d5. So now we take on d5, queen e3, queen d7, knight e5, queen d6. And the draw was agreed in my game against Mikhailevsky, because if now white plays knight c4, then we simply can return back, and this is a draw. And now we are returning back to the plan with the development of the bishop to a6, and I would like to show you another interesting and important game against Quenis. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, g3, d5, knight f3, bishop b4, bishop d2, bishop e7, bishop g2, c6, queen c2, castle, castle, b6, bishop f4, and now the bishop is going to a6, knight b d2, and now the knight is going to d7. So the bishop on a6 is active, and our idea is simple. So we want to play c5 at some point, or also we want to play rook c8 and then c5. So these are our basic ideas. Rook f d1 is always a useful move, and after rook f d1 we can play knight h5. So we want to exchange on f4, and usually this is favorable for black. So white has to go back with his bishop. So white must play bishop e3, and then the bishop is on e3, as we already seen from the previous example. Sometimes it is wise to play f5, but in this position it is also possible to play bishop d6. So we are taking the key square f4 under control, and also we are freeing the square e7 for our queen. Queen a4, bishop b7, knight e1. All white pieces are situated awkwardly, and white needs to break their coordination in order to move them to the better places. Knight hf6, the knight can go back now, although of course the idea with f5 is very interesting here. So knight hf6, knight d3, now we take on c4, queen c4, and now knight is going on d5. Please note that here in this position it is not possible to take on c4 with a knight, because we win the material. Queen c4, now the knight is going to d5. We want to spoil the pawn's structure, so we are now attacking the bishop. The knight has go to f1, then we play rook c8. We are preparing to play c5. You see now that it is black who is fighting for the initiative, and white must play very careful in order not to find himself in a worse position. Quenis is a very experienced player, and he was able to equalize here. So he played queen a4, b5, queen b3. Now our queen is going to b6, a4, knight e3, knight e3, a6. So he is exchanging the material and preparing for my advance c6, c5. So when I play c6, c5, lot of material will be eliminated. Bishop e7, knight c2, rook c7, knight c b4, rook fc8, and after e3, c5, the draw was agreed in this game. So that was last video on the Catalan. Of course, the system is much more complex, but in these video clips I have given you idea how to play after bishop b4 check. And if you have questions, you can always look at more of my games. I have very big experience, and you can search database for more material available. Also, if you will continue looking for this variation in the tournaments of the top levels, you will find more and more useful games. But if you will study these videos carefully, you can start playing the Catalan defense with black immediately, and I am sure that the variation with bishop b4 will serve you for a long time. This is guaranteed.